As a fan, I want to ask you something. How much confidence do you really feel when this team faces an elite defensive line in an important game? Not in September. Not in any regular season game. I'm talking about January, when everything intensifies and every play seems heavier. Because that's when the truth comes out. That's when the physical battles in the trenches decide who stays playing and who goes home. And, to be honest, that's when the uncomfortable questions start to arise. But before I go into detail, click the like button and subscribe to stay well informed. Let's go! It's happening again, and if you thought the message from Indianapolis would calm your nerves regarding the offensive line, you might want to sit down and listen to what comes next. Because, from what was said at the NFL Combine, from what John Lynch made crystal clear in his interview, the San Francisco 49ers, as an organization, truly believe their offensive line is good enough. And if you followed the last 2 seasons, as I know you have, that statement alone should make you stop and think. Live from the Combine, the tone was firm. There's an outside perception that the 49ers' offensive line isn't good enough. That was the premise. That was the premise. And when questioned directly about it, John Lynch didn't hesitate. He defended his players. He reaffirmed his position. He made it clear. They love their players, they trust their players, and they aren't allowing outside opinions to affect how they evaluate this unit. Let's analyze exactly what was said. Lynch praised Trent Williams, calling him one of the greatest tackles of all time. That part? That's up for debate. Trent Williams is a future Hall of Famer. When healthy, he changes everything. But here's the reality we can't ignore. He's 38 years old. Even if he returns and plays at a high level, how many elite seasons does he have left? And, more importantly, what's the succession plan? He also praised Colton McKivitz, saying he earned his contract. He highlighted Jake Brendel, stating that he played excellent football. He mentioned Dominic Pooney as a great draft pick. The message was unanimous. We believe in our offensive line. But this is where the tension rises. Because when you watch the videos, and this is something this fan base does religiously, the story doesn't match the confidence. When this offensive line faces elite defenses, it gets pushed back. Not sometimes, constantly. You saw that against the Seahawks, you saw it against the Texans, you saw it in the divisional round, you saw it in Week 18, you saw it in the most important moments, and this is nothing new. Since 2017, when John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan took over, the 49ers have prioritized the defensive line. They've invested heavily in that area. And, to their credit, that side of the trenches has often been dominant. But the offensive philosophy has been different. They've openly valued skill position players at the expense of offensive linemen. This isn't speculation. This has already been stated. The problem? The best organizations in the league build their team from the inside out. When you look at the Seahawks, led by John Schneider and coached by Mike Macdonald, what happened in the last 2 games? 8 quarters, 0 touchdowns for San Francisco. The constant theme? The 49ers were dominated on the defensive line. And this is where the situation gets even more worrying. The organization just offered Brock Purdy a contract worth an average of $55 million annually. That's the salary of a franchise quarterback. It's the salary of someone who says, "We believe you're our guy." So, the question that naturally arises is simple. How do you protect that investment? Because the pressure doesn't come so much from the sidelines, but rather from the interior of the defensive line. Pressure through the middle is any quarterback's nightmare. When the pocket collapses in the middle, there's nowhere to advance. There's nowhere to rise. That's where the chaos happens. Let's talk specifically about Jake Brendel, because this is where the numbers and videos start to conflict with the narrative. In 2023, he allowed 29 pressures, ranking 30th among centers. In 2024, 26 pressures, ranking 37th. In 2025, 23 pressures, ranking 31st. That's not elite. It's not even above average. It's near the bottom of the league table. Yes, he fits the scheme. Yes, he's smart before the snap. Yes, he can execute well in the outside zone. But in pass protection, especially against high-level defensive tackles, he struggles. And when the interior of the defensive line is pressured by Brock Purdy, the offense stalls. And we've seen this movie before in crucial moments. Remember the NFC Championship game against the Rams. Aaron Donald breaking through the defensive line to secure the win. Remember the NFC Championship game against the Eagles, when that defensive line dominated everything. Remember the Super Bowl against the Chiefs, when Chris Jones was left open on a crucial play because of a defensive lapse. These aren't isolated incidents. They're patterns. At the Combine, when asked about the top priority this offseason, Lynch pointed to the defensive line. And yes, that unit, when finished, is last in sacks. Yes, having players like Nick Bosa back is important. Yes, Fred Warner is the cornerstone of this defense. But since the offensive line can't be the number one priority, after even with the 49ers' inside offensive line and the Seahawks' defensive line so open, the results aren't going to change. So, I want to ask you, because this conversation isn't going to end anytime soon, do you believe the 49ers management is right to trust this offensive line as it is? Or do you think this philosophy is hurting the team in crucial moments? Leave your opinions in the comments, because this debate is only just beginning, and we haven't even reached half of what this means for the franchise's future. This is where the conversation shifts from frustration to urgency. Because if you broaden your perspective and look at the NFC landscape right now, standing still isn't neutrality. It's falling behind. The conference is strong, it's competitive, it's physical, it's trench-dominated. And when you assess the teams that consistently excel in January and February, there's a common thread. They invest in the offensive line. Take the Philadelphia Eagles. Led by Howie Roseman, this organization treats offensive linemen like gold. There's a reason people in the league joke that they're bound to draft another offensive lineman early in the draft. It's not random. It's philosophy. And what has that produced? 2 Super Bowls since 2017. That's no coincidence. You may not like the Eagles, you may hate the rivalry, but you can't ignore the plan. Meanwhile, the 49ers have bet on skill position dominance. And yes, when it works, it's beautiful. It's explosive. It's creative. This is what makes Kyle Shanahan one of the most respected playmakers in American football. But the design only works when the protection holds long enough for it to develop. When the interior of the defensive line collapses in less than 2 seconds, the repertoire of plays diminishes. Creativity disappears. The offense becomes reactive instead of dictating the pace. Think about the running game in the last 2 seasons. It hasn't been the same. There were times when the outside zone didn't generate that consistent advance. Short yard situations seemed like arduous battles. And in the red zone, many interrupted drives. This isn't just about play selection. It has to do with movement on the line of scrimmage. You can't be a finesse team in a conference that's turning into a street war. And let's talk about the ripple effect. When the offensive line struggles, the quarterback takes hits. Timing is compromised. The long passing game becomes riskier. The running game loses efficiency. The defense stays on the field longer. The margin for error decreases. This accumulates. And this is where the investment in Brock Purdy changes everything. Brock Purdy is no longer the rookie quarterback with a negotiated contract who masked the roster's inefficiencies. He's a $55 million a year pillar. This means expectations rise. This means protection becomes non-negotiable. You don't offer this contract and then say, We're happy with our defensive line because history shows us what happens when protection fails at critical moments. We've seen Aaron Donald close out an NFC championship. We've seen Chris Jones ruin a Super Bowl play because of a protection failure. We've seen elite defensive lines dictate playoff outcomes. These weren't just tactical errors. They were imbalances in the trenches. And here's the part that should really grab your attention. The Seahawks aren't rebuilding. They're on the rise. The Rams are competitive. The NFC North is full of strong teams. The Eagles are stable. The Cowboys still have firepower on offense. The Commanders are on a roll. There are no easy paths anymore. If San Francisco believes it can win with its current offensive line, it's betting that internal development alone will fill the gap, that Jake Brendel improves in pass protection, that Colton McKivitz levels up, that the interior of the line becomes more solid without major external investments. It's a gamble, because Brett Coleman's reaction said more than any statistic. When analysts look at the trio of interior linemen and instinctively cringe, that's telling. When multiple evaluators say that the priority should be the offensive line and the tight end above almost everything else, that's not noise. It's a warning. And it's not about panic. It's about opportunity. The opportunities for a championship don't stay open forever. Trent Williams won't play indefinitely. The defense is aging in some positions. Contracts are inflating. The margin is shrinking every year. The 49ers didn't win 12 games by chance. The roster is talented. The coaching staff is respected. But in the details, in the small minutiae, the offensive line's performance has stood out in decisive moments. On long third downs, on 2-minute plays, in conference finals, in the Super Bowl. That's where championships are decided. So, the question now becomes philosophical. Do you insist on what you've always believed, investing in skill instead of investing in the defensive line from the start? Or do you adapt to the evidence that keeps emerging in January? Because if the difference between San Francisco's inside offensive line and elite defensive lines remains as large as it was against Seattle, against Kansas City, against Philadelphia, the outcome could continue to be, has the philosophy changed? Leave your opinion in the comments. Let's start the debate. And if you want authentic and unfiltered coverage like this throughout the preseason, don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next updates.